And also, you can always use pre-shredded cheese for this too, if you don't want to do all the shredding work yourself. That's always an option as well. Sometimes not every single cheese is available pre-shredded, but definitely cheddar. So you could always do an all cheddar mac and cheese if you wanted to also, just to make it a bit easier if you didn't want to shred anything. Or you could do different cheeses too. But that cuts the recipe time down for sure if you're looking to make a quick recipe. So that's good to know as well. This might be good. How is everyone doing on their cheddar? Does anyone need more time shredding? If you do, that's totally fine. I see a few thumbs up. Is anyone else working still? All right, I see a bunch of thumbs up, so we can go ahead and measure this. And if you need more time, just let me know and we can wait. So basically, I have now this big pound of shredded cheese, and we need 5 cups of the cheddar. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my 1 cup measuring cup, and I'm just gonna take from this pile here and fill this cup 5 times. So I got 1 there, and then after you measure these, you're just gonna wanna put them in a big bowl. So I have 1 cup. I have 2 cups. And it doesn't have to be perfect either. It all will get melted down. 3. 4. 5. Right. And then if you have any extra like I do, you can always save that for other things, or you can always just put more on top if you want it to be extra, extra cheesy. So I'm just going to put this extra in a separate bowl. And wipe off my cutting board. All right. Once your cheddar is measured and in your bowl, give me a thumbs up, and then we'll move on to the Gruyere. I see a few. Awesome, awesome. All right, looks like everyone's ready. So now we're gonna do our Gruyere. We need 3 cups of that. So again, just the same process that we did before. Some Gruyères have a little bit of a rind on the end once in a while. I think mine might. So I'm just gonna cut that off first. And then start shredding. And if you guys like this recipe, this is perfect to make again for the Super Bowl in a few weeks. I know we have a few dietary restrictions in this class. I believe there was a gluten-free, which is very simple. You could always substitute the pasta for gluten-free pasta. And then when we use flour to make the roux, you could always use a gluten-free flour. I would definitely do like a 1-to-1 AP flour instead of using an almond flour or one other kind of flour alternative, because it might not make the roux as well as a 1-to-1 gluten-free AP flour would. So I would definitely stick to that. And I know there was a couple of lactose intolerance restrictions, which actually this recipe with this specific cheese that we're using is pretty lactose friendly. So the cheddar is pretty low in lactose. It has anywhere from 0 to 0.2% lactose, I believe, which is pretty low. Gruyere has pretty much no lactose because of the way it's processed. And Havarti has 0.3%. And then again, lactose intolerance is always based on the individual and what they can handle, but these are 3 relatively low lactose cheeses, so that's great. And then you can always use lactose-free milk, or if you have to go the dairy-free route, you can always use dairy-free cheese and a dairy-free milk. So that's always something you can do too. So this recipe is also very adaptable to those things. I am almost done with my Gruyere here. All right. And then once you have your Gruyere all shredded, give me a thumbs up again. We'll measure that. I see a bunch. Okay, looks like everyone's ready. So we're going to take our big bowl again. And we need 3 cups. So I'm going to take my Gruyere and I'm going to do the same thing I did with the cheddar. I'm going to do 3 cups and add it right into my bowl. Looks like I'll have some extra of this too. Into the big bowl, and 1 more. Perfect. And for anyone who just joined, we are up to the point. We're still shredding our cheese. We have shredded 5 cups of cheddar cheese and 3 cups of Gruyere, and now we are about to move onto the Havarti. Our oven has been preheated to 350 degrees. I'm going to take my extra again. All right, and then if you're ready for Havarti, give me a thumbs up. We are almost done with the shredding. Great. Does anyone need any more time, or can we do the last cheese? If you do, that's totally okay. Okay, looks like we're good. So now we're gonna take the Havarti and we need 2 cups of this one. And Havarti is a little bit softer than the other 2, so you just want to be a little bit extra careful with the grater to make sure your hands are protected, because it could slip a little. It's a little more flimsy than the other ones. I couldn't do this with the other ones, so you just want to be a little bit careful when applying the pressure. It might fall apart on you a little bit, so you just want to make sure your fingers are protected. And if it's you're finding you're having a little bit of hard time, see mine's kind of falling apart a little bit, you could even just break it into very small pieces and do it that way if you're nervous about grating it, or if you don't want to grate it since it's softer. And then eventually it will just melt in the pot with everything else. So if you want to do that, you can as well. if you do it towards, if you're using the box grater and you do it kind of on an angle, like I'm not, the way that I have it, it's on a little bit of an angle towards the grater, so that helps keep it in place. But always do whatever works for you best. And then another way to help with the Havarti, if you make this again in the future, if you keep it in the fridge right till you need to use it, it'll be a little bit firmer. I just bought mine this morning and then I never put it in the fridge after, so that's probably why it's really soft. So if you keep it in the fridge right until you have to use it, it'll definitely help it be a little bit firm. Right, I think I have 2 cups here. Perfect. Does everyone have their Havarti shredded? Awesome. All right, the arm workout is done, so that's good. Okay, so for our last time, we're gonna take our big bowl of cheese and we're gonna measure 2 cups of the Havarti. I think I have exactly 2 cups. And then put it in our big bowl. And then once you have that, all your cheeses in your big bowl, give me a thumbs up. And we'll go on to the next step. All right, everyone, does anyone need any more time to finish up on cheese? All right. Yep, so if you wanted to make it smaller, if you wanted to half the recipe, you could just half all the ingredients. If you wanted it to be even smaller than that, you could always divide everything by 4. But it's definitely an easy recipe to both half and double. So you can definitely do that if you want to make a smaller batch. What we're making right now could probably serve 6 to 8 people. All right. Okay, so now we're going to take our big bowl of cheese that we have, and you can either use your hands or you can use a spoon. What you want to do is pretty much just mix everything up so that the cheese is evenly dispersed as a mixture. So you just want to give it a toss. Make sure you see pieces of all kinds, just so that you have some of each cheese everywhere. So I'm just using my hands. You don't have to use your hands. You can use a spoon to mix it all around if you want. But see, now I see specks of the orange cheddar everywhere. I see some of the Gruyere. I see some of the Havarti. So I just want to make sure that it's all evenly mixed in my bowl. All right. Once your cheese is mixed, we'll do another thumbs up and then we will measure out some. Awesome. All right, I think almost everyone's all set. Does anyone need any more time? Okay. So now we're gonna have our big bowl of cheese here, and then we're gonna need another little smaller bowl. And we're just gonna separate some of this. So we want to take 2 cups out of here and put them in the smaller bowl. So the same way we were measuring before, you can just take your hand or you can use a spoon and just measure 2 cups of the cheese mixture and put that in the smaller bowl. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to use one of the bowls to make the cheese sauce, and then the other bowl, once we bake the mac and cheese, we're going to layer that cheese in the middle and on top. So that way it's extra cheesy. So now I have most of my cheese in my big bowl, and then I have 2 cups of cheese in this bowl. And give me a thumbs up when you have both your bowls of cheese ready. Oh, I see almost everyone. Guys, you're doing great today. That was the hardest part. I'm just going to wash my hands quickly because I have cheese all over them, and then I will be right back. All right, is everyone ready to get started on our cheese sauce? Okay, great. So before we actually start doing anything on the stove, I want to jump down for a second and just microwave our milk first, so we have that ready and we don't have to do that while the stove is on with the sauce. So we need 5 cups of milk total. And we just want to warm that up so that when we add it into the sauce, it doesn't take as long to heat up, and we're not adding super cold milk from the fridge to the hot pan. So I don't have a 5-cup measuring cup. I have a 4-cup and a 2-cup. So I'm going to put 3 cups in one and 2 cups in the other. That way it'll heat a little quicker too. And you want to make sure you're using a microwave safe measuring cup, or if you don't have a microwave safe measuring cup, you could always measure out the milk and then just add it into a microwave safe bowl. So I'm just doing 3 in the big one and 2 in the other one. And like I said earlier, I'm using lactose-free milk. You can do that. You can use regular milk. You can use almond milk, oat milk, skim milk, fat-free milk, whatever you want to do. All right, once your milk is measured, thumbs up, and then we can heat that up. Okay, perfect. So you can take the milk. I'm gonna have to do 2 batches. I'm assuming most people will. You're just gonna want to heat it for 1 minute. And you just want to keep your eye on it. You might have to stop it halfway through because sometimes it can bubble over. So you just want to make sure you're watching it. And as long as it doesn't bubble over, totally fine. And again, what this does is this is going to allow the cheese sauce eventually to make a smoother mixture because we're not adding something super hot, super cold into the hot pan. All right, now I'm just going to carefully take it out. and give it a little stir. And you don't need it to be super hot. We just want it kind of lukewarm so it's not cold from the fridge. And now I'm just going to take my other container and do the exact same thing. I'm going to stir this one too. Right. How's everyone doing? Is our milk all heated? Okay, great. So before we get on to the stove, we just need to measure out a half cup of flour. So I'm just going to take my measuring cup. And I'm going to level it off with the back of a knife. And just put that flour in a bowl. And then we'll use that for our cheese sauce. And then once you're all ready with that flour, give me another thumbs up and we will head to the stove. Great. All right. So now we are on the stove. You're going to need a big pot. You can either use something like a Dutch oven or just a bigger pot. We are going to need 2 pots total today. So you want to make sure if you have a bigger one, I would use the bigger one that you have for the sauce and then the smaller one for the pasta, just because we're going to end up adding the pasta into the sauce. So if you have a bigger pot, use that for the sauce and then the smaller one for the pasta. And you just want to have your flour handy. And then we also need 1 stick of butter. So we're going to heat this big pot over medium heat. And the first thing we're going to do is just add 1 stick of butter into that pot. Let me move to this burner. Actually. So again, we're going to put the pot over medium heat, and then we have 1 stick of butter in there. And we want to let the butter melt completely, but we don't want it to start sizzling or burning. So just make sure you watch the butter. You can take a spoon to stir it around a little bit, help it melt down. And this is going to help us create a roux, which helps the sauce thicken. The stick of butter is a half cup of butter. Or 8 tablespoons, whichever one is on your butter. So you can see my butter starting to melt a little bit. I'm going to stir it. How's everyone doing? Your butter almost there? I see a few thumbs up. If you are, if your butter is fully melted, I don't want it to start burning. So what you can do if you're ready is you can add that flour into the butter. And then you're going to want to use a whisk from here on out, and you're just going to want to whisk it together. Mine's almost ready, but if your butter is melted, you can go ahead and add that in. I don't want it to burn. All right, mine's all pretty much there. So the butter's fully melted now. I know it's a little bit hard to see. I'm adding all of my flour into that pot and I'm gonna whisk it together. It's gonna clump up and get thick, but that's okay. That's what we want it to do. So now it's gonna look kind of a little bit like a paste, as you can see here. And you just wanna kind of continuously whisk it for about 2 minutes we're gonna do, and that'll help take out that raw flavor taste. For anyone who just joined, we just started working on our cheese sauce on the stove. We have our butter. It's a full stick of butter and a half cup of flour going right now. My heat might be a little too high. I'm going to put it down. I see some bubbles in my roux happening right now. I don't want that to happen too much, so I just lowered my heat a little bit. Better to have it lower than higher, so I put mine down a little bit more like medium low. How is everyone doing? Does everyone have flour and butter in their pot? Okay, great. You guys are doing fabulous. Okay. So now the next step here, it's a little bit like a team job if you guys want to do that. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to want to slowly add that milk that we measured out into the pot here. And the mixture is going to thicken before it thins out. And you want to add your milk very slowly. You don't want to just dump it all in, because then that might separate the sauce a little bit. I'm going to move this over so you can see a little bit more. So because I am doing this myself, I'm taking one hand to whisk, and then I'm going to slowly trickle in the milk with my other hand. Like I said, it's a great team activity. So if one person whisks and the other pours the milk, you can do that. Otherwise, just take it really slow. As you can see, like I said, my mixture's thickening up a little bit. I'll show you guys. It's going to get really thick like this before it thins. You just got to keep mixing. So we're just going to keep slowly adding the milk. If you need to do it in little spurts too, that's okay. So I can add a little bit and then whisk, and then add a little more, whisk again. And we're continuously whisking so that nothing burns. So see, mine's now really thick here. It's in clumps. So we just want to keep adding that milk. And you'll see as you start to go, it'll eventually start to loosen up a little bit. And once we have all our milk added, it'll be much more liquidy. And we're just going to keep doing this until we have all our milk in. I'm almost done with my first one. So this is what mine looks like after 2 cups of milk. It's still definitely thick, but it's loosened up to be more like a very thick sauce versus those clumps that we were seeing earlier. And that's what that butter and flour did for us. It made this nice and thick, which will help once we add the cheese. So now I'm going to just keep adding my milk. And when you're whisking too, you want to make sure you're paying attention to the areas on the edge. A lot of times the flour and butter mixture can get stuck in the corners or on the edge. So you want to make sure you're also taking your whisk and going around the edge so that nothing gets stuck and burns over there. That's really important too. Right, mine's definitely starting to loosen now and become more liquidy. Again, I'm making sure nothing is stuck in those edges. I want to make sure too on the edges of the or the sides of the pan, there's nothing stuck. And that all gets mixed in. All right, I am just getting to the end now. And my mixture is definitely much more liquidy now. So by the end, it should look like the consistency of milk again. Yeah, so definitely we have milk consistency. Check those corners, check those sides. How is everyone's pots doing? Awesome. Does everyone have all their milk added to their pot? Oh, you guys are amazing. Okay. So we're going to let that warm up a little bit. We don't want it to come to a boil or anything, but we're just going to let it sit in there. The heat's not super high. If you do see some bubbles start to form, maybe just check and turn that heat down a little bit. But in the meantime, I just want to get the water in the pot for the pasta. So you're just going to take your other pot and just fill it with water so that we can boil the pasta. I just filled my pot up about 3/4 of the way, and I'm going to put that on another burner and just put that up to high heat so that water can boil. All right. All right, so is everyone's pot ready? Okay, also, I would say we want to have a colander ready for when we have to drain that pasta. So I would go ahead and get a colander out now if you haven't already. Just so we know that we have that when we need to drain our pasta. All right. Is everyone ready to start adding some cheese? Great. Okay. So we're going to take our bigger bowl of cheese, the one that we first had. I'm going to check this, just give it a little stir again. And I see a little bit of steam coming up, so I know that this mixture is ready. So similarly to how we added the milk really slowly, we're going to add our cheese really slowly. So I'm just going to take like a handful at a time and drop it into this milk mixture, and then make sure to really, really whisk. So that it all melts. Again, you really want to pay attention to the edges of the pan and the sides of the pan again, so that nothing gets stuck. We don't want the cheese to burn on the bottom. And when you first add it, you can kind of see the specks. So once the little specks of cheese are gone and they've melted in there, you can just go ahead and add another handful. So you can see when I first add it, there's a little bit of those specks of cheese. I'm going to keep whisking. I would say we want to put our heat down to low for this as well. So if your heat is not on low, just turn it down to low, because the milk mixture itself is warm, and then that low heat will just keep it at a good temperature. Awesome job, guys. Everyone looks like they're doing a really good job. And you'll start to notice as you start to add more cheese and it starts to melt, this sauce is going to thicken up again a little bit. Not super thick, but it's going to be a little bit thicker than the consistency of milk. And it'll pull a little bit from the whisk. I have about, I'd say half of my cheese added now, and I'm getting there. You just want to make sure everything gets really melted. So take as much time as you need to make sure that everything in there is melted and incorporated really, really well. And this part is the great part to tag team as well, because whisking can get really tiring. So if you have a partner with you, then you can always take turns whisking so that your arm doesn't get too tired. I'm switching arms. You can do that too. I can see now my mixture is definitely getting thicker. When I pull it up, you can see that's the consistency with the cheese, and it's changing a little bit of color too, since I have that yellow cheddar in there as well. If you only used white cheddar, then your mixture's gonna look a little off-white, but it won't be a super different color. So it's just preference of whatever cheese you used. How is everyone doing? Is everyone almost there? Is anyone's water boiling yet or no? If you do have your water boiling and you feel comfortable to, at the same time as finishing the cheese sauce, you can add your pasta to that water. The only thing you're gonna wanna do is whatever it says on that package for the cook time, you're gonna wanna cook it for 1 minute less than what it says. So if it says 10 minutes, then you're gonna wanna do 9. If it says 12, you're gonna wanna do 11. So if you guys are ready to do that, you can go ahead and add that pasta in, and then you're gonna wanna set a timer for whatever your package says minus 1 minute. And the reason we're cooking it less is because it's gonna get baked after, so we don't want it to be too soft. How's my water doing? Not just yet. And how are people's cheese sauces going? Is everyone done? Is anyone still working like me? Looks like most people are done. Okay. So What we can do as well is we can add some seasoning to this cheese sauce. So what we're gonna add is 1 teaspoon of mustard powder, which looks like this. It's like a yellow powder. So you can go ahead, if your cheese sauce is done, add 1 teaspoon of that mustard powder. And then you can also add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. The mustard powder, it will give it a little bit of color, but it'll also, it just adds some flavor to the cheese sauce. If you don't want to add it, you of course do not have to. But because it does have that yellow color, it will slightly change the color of the sauce, but it's more for flavor. All right, I'm going ahead and adding the last of my cheese now. And then once you've added the mustard powder and the garlic powder, you can also add some salt and pepper to taste if you'd like. So you can go ahead and use a little spoon and taste your cheese sauce if you want and add whatever seasoning you think you need, or you don't have to add any at all. You could just let all the cheese be the flavor. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add my seasonings in. All right, my cheese sauce looks like it is just about done. I'm just gonna give it a taste. Okay. Let me check on my water. Taking a little long to boil. Okay, so everyone, their cheese sauce is good, and we have our water boiling and or our pasta cooking already. Is that right? Okay. So now what we can do is we have 4 tablespoons of butter that we need. And what we're gonna do is we want to cut this butter into identical sized cubes. And they don't have to be perfect though. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this 4 tablespoons of butter in half. And then with that half, I'm gonna cut in half again. And I'm gonna lay this side down. So I have this 1 pat of butter. This is probably about 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm gonna cut down the middle. And then turn around and cut down the middle again. So then that way I have these 4 cubes here. So I'm just gonna lay those out. I'm gonna do the same thing with this tablespoon to make the cubes. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with that other half. So at the end, you should have 16 cubes of butter. So I have all my butter on that cutting board. I'm just gonna leave that there. And then you can also just stir your cheese sauce every once in a while just to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom or anything like that. Once you have your butter cubed, we'll do a thumbs up. Has anyone's pasta finished cooking yet? Or is everyone still on the stove right now? Caitlin, I see you. Your pasta's finished. Is anyone else's pasta finished or is it still cooking? Okay, I see one more. So if your pasta is finished, again, you can just always drain that. Oh, I think my water's boiling. I'm gonna add my pasta in quick. That is actually my favorite part about mac and cheese is being able to pick the shape. I'm using a little spiral shape here. But the beauty of it is you can do whatever shape you like. So my pasta only has to cook for 6 minutes. All right, so it seems like most people's pasta is finished. Thumbs up if your pasta is all set out of the pot and drained. Okay, so I'll just guide you guys through what you have to do now. So I want you to take that pasta from the colander. And you're gonna want to dump it into your cheese sauce. So you're gonna pour the pasta into your pot with your cheese sauce and mix it thoroughly. It's going to look like there's way more sauce than pasta, which is exactly what we want. When you bake your mac and cheese, the pasta is going to end up soaking up a lot of that sauce. And the heat is going to help it evaporate. So it's not going to be as soupy as it looks like now. So if it does look soupy, that is totally fine. That is what is supposed to happen. All right. How is everyone doing with that? I see a few thumbs up. I see another one. Awesome. Awesome. You guys are doing fabulous. Okay. So once your pasta is evenly coated in that cheese sauce, what you can do is then add it into a 9x13. You can use a casserole dish. You can use a foil tin that you can get at the grocery store, whatever is easier or whatever you have on hand. You're just going to want to pour carefully, or you can use a ladle or a big spoon and spoon it into that casserole dish so that all the pasta and all of the sauce is in that dish. And if there's some extra sauce, like I said, you want to make sure you get all that in there too, because the pasta and the heat of the oven will help that absorb up a little bit. Yeah, you can spray it. You don't have to spray the pan, but you can absolutely do if you want to, or you could even do like put a layer of butter on it if you wanted to. I'd say if you're using a foil pan, it might be better to spray it just in case, but if you're using a casserole dish, you might not have to. It's always better to, just in case, if you have the spray on hand. But it's not something that's super, super sticky like a cake or anything. All right, and then once everyone has all of your pasta and sauce, everything in your casserole dish or your pan, give me another thumbs up, and then we have 1 or 2 more steps left. Okay, I see mostly thumbs up, so that's great. Just gonna stir my pasta quick. Okay. So the next thing we are going to do is quickly measure out breadcrumbs. Again, if you are gluten-free, you can always substitute this for gluten-free breadcrumbs, or you can just leave the breadcrumbs off if you don't want them either. That's totally fine. So we need 1 cup of breadcrumbs. You can use whatever kind of breadcrumbs you like. I like to use Go for this because they're a little bit extra crispy. So I'm just gonna pour 1 cup of those breadcrumbs in. And then once you have that measured out, you can sprinkle that on top of the mac and cheese mixture. My pasta's about to be done, so I'm going to catch up with everyone really quick. So you can see mine looks really, really soupy too. And that's exactly what you want it to look like. All right, so I'm going to turn this heat off. I'm just going to pour this pasta in here. Okay, so we sprinkle the breadcrumbs on top. Just try and get them as evenly around the top as possible. All right, and then we're going to take those cubes of butter that we did before. And you're just going to evenly spread them across the top of your mac and cheese. So I'm probably just going to do 4 across. Like that. And just make 4 rows just like that. So you have that butter evenly on the top. How's everyone doing with that? Give me a thumbs up when you're all set. Perfect. Okay. So now we just have our last step. We're going to take our oven mitts because we're going into a hot oven, and we're just going to put this mac and cheese in there. And you want to bake it for 30 minutes. So make sure you set that timer for 30 minutes. And then if your oven has the option to, at the end, after that 30-minute timer goes off, you can, oh my gosh, you're right. We forgot to put the cheese on top. That's my bad. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, I'm going to take this out of the oven. Thank you, Gianna and Alania. I completely forgot about that. So Normally, what you would have done is you would have put that cheese underneath the breadcrumbs. But what I'm gonna do now is just put it on top because it's gonna melt anyway. So you just want to take that and spread it across the top. And if you wanted to evenly disperse it too, you could, the next time you make it, you could always do half the mac and cheese and then some of the shredded cheese and more mac and cheese and then top with shredded cheese. But there's just enough to go over the top too. So however you like to do it. So again, normally it would be cheese, then breadcrumbs, then butter, but I completely forgot. So we changed the order a little bit, but it'll still taste just as good. Okay, so now I have the mac and cheese with all of that extra cheese on top, and now we can put it in the oven. And then you have that timer for 30 minutes. At the end, if you want the top to be a little extra crispy, that cheese to be extra bubbly, you can always broil it for anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes, depending on how your oven works. If you do broil it, you just want to check on it constantly to make sure that it's not burning, because that can go very, very quickly. But other than that, that is your baked mac and cheese. Does anyone have any other questions for today? Did everyone have fun? Did we like the recipe? Oh, good. I'm so glad. Awesome. All right. So if there's no other questions.
How freezable is this?
You can definitely freeze it. What I've done in the past is instead of putting it in the big container, I got smaller, like kind of individual portion of the foil containers, and then I put it in there. And then instead of baking it right away, I just put foil on top, freeze it. And then when you want to eat it, I would defrost it in the fridge first. And then once it's defrosted, you can then bake it afterwards for that 30 minutes. And it comes out great. Awesome. Okay, thank you guys for coming today. I hope you guys had a great time. I'm so excited for you to try this recipe. If you have any photos, send them our way, okay? I'll see you guys next time.